Hi there, and welcome to another 5G update. I'm Phil Harvey. I'm the editor in chief of Light Reading, and I'm joined today by Pablo Tomasi, who is one of our analysts at Omdia, and he's on the IoT networks team and looks at IoT and private networks. Pablo, how are you?
Hi, Phil. I'm very good, thanks. Glad to be here with you.
Yeah, great to talk to you. And I would always prefer that I get a chance to go to our London studio, but we'll make do with this for now. um, Thanks for doing this. So I want to first, I guess I'll plug something on the light reading site, and then I'll get around to asking you a proper question. But on light reading, we recently published a really extensive story on CBRS spectrum, and we mapped out where it is in the U.S., who owns what. If you haven't seen that story, go to light reading, search CBRS, and it'll be there. But as we're putting all of that out there, it got me to wonder how CBRS is going to change the landscape for private networks, because I could kind of see a scenario where this helps service providers and then where it also makes things a lot more competitive for them. What's your view on CBRS and private networks? And then maybe you could give us one side or the other, whether this seems like it's going to help them or hurt them.
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair, the answer is a little bit in the middle, so to speak. So if you look about CBRS, what CBRS wanted to do was effectively enable a democratization of spectrum. So
Mm-hmm.
bringing the spectrum more into the hands of the enterprise. And that is pretty much in line with what we see for private networks. Now, at the same time, of course, there are other interests in the market. And particularly, we have the, telco ecosystem and their traditional interests. So what we've seen from the auction of the priority access license is that effectively CBRS has been sort of a half empty, half full glass. So it
Okay.
has delivered some of the innovation in terms of private networks, and I can talk in a little bit about some of the providers that they are really bringing forward the private network conversation and market. And at the same time, a lot of the licenses that have been won by telcos, and they have now the opportunity to either focus on developing the private network market, or they will use those licenses first and foremost to drive their traditional business. Now, that could be in order to uh, deliver fixed wireless access, or it could be used to augment the network, so increase the capacity and make sure that their network for the traditional consumer segment is as strong as possible. So overall, CBRS has been a step in the right direction towards private networks and sort of the world of enterprises, but it has not been a revolution. So this is
Okay.
something that I always want to make quite clear. It's not that it's changing the private network sphere from one day to the other. Now, looking a little bit more on the positive side for innovation, then we see that there are a lot of companies that are being attracted to this market. So we see companies virtually from every corner of the tech ecosystem that are now looking at the private network opportunity, and they are developing new solutions, and they are bringing private networks to different industries, whether we're talking about the smart campus or whether we're talking about manufacturing. There's a lot of innovation from companies such as Federated Wireless or Solona, which are really targeting the private network market at the moment.
Yeah, let's. I want to key in on what Federated Wireless is doing. Just to give a specific company instance of how they've taken advantage of this space. How are they approaching the market, and what makes what they're doing a little bit different than than your traditional telco.
So what they're doing is provide connectivity as a service. So effectively, they want to provide a fully managed option for private networks, and they are relying on taking away complexity from the enterprise. So you can purchase the solution of Federated Wireless from AWS or Microsoft marketplaces, and effectively you can theoretically, with one click you can buy the solution, and then this is the same way that an enterprise IT manager buys any IT product. You can actually embark in a private networks journey. So this is something that is quite different from a lot of the things that we have seen in the private network space, and it's one of the examples of different approaches that we see in the market at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when Microsoft was making a series of acquisitions, they had made the comment that um, 5G eventually was just going to be a service on the cloud. That you'd be able to purchase and provision everything you would need for a private network or for cellular network as a cloud service or as a cloud application. So it sounds like the federated wireless guys are heading in that direction a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big cloud players, they are all well into this idea of 5G, well into this idea of private networks. And correctly, as you said, Microsoft has been acquiring a few companies. Now, the rationale behind the acquisition is not, strictly speaking, only or necessarily private networks, but you can see how this idea of 5G for the enterprise, and as a consequence of this, also private networks, it plays definitely a role in the reason why Microsoft has, decided to spend that money.
Yeah, since we're going to the big 5G event and we're going to be talking about all things big 5G, um, what impact is 5G having on the private networks space? Whether it's bringing in new innovation, new companies, as you say, or is it just sort of allowing a different kind of service, or are we still in that earlier part where there's things haven't really gotten going yet in that space?
I mean, if you look at a private networks point of view, and we're tracking private networks deployment within Omdia, the majority of the network deployment are still based on LTE. So the market is effectively LTE based. Now we see that 5G is increasing. However, it's a long game, right? 5G is not going to become the leading technology for private networks anytime soon. However, it still plays an important role. Like, a lot of the marketing hype is effectively generating leads. So a company may start discussing, okay, what's the opportunity for 5G? And, whilst you're having that conversation, that you can say, okay, 5G is a few years down the line, but at this point in time, I can use private LTE networks to develop X, Y, and Z. And then this will be on the road to 5G, whenever that will happen. So it's sort of a hook to start that conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. That happens in all kinds of technology markets. You start talking about the leading thing, and then they kind of back you down from that. Say,
Exactly.
if you buy this one thing now, we'll get you ready for it. So that makes sense. Okay, well, let's see. Anything you're looking forward to in the next, say, I mean, like, predictions are kind of out the window right now, but I guess, are there any market developments you're looking forward to in the near future in the private network space? Any particular verticals seem to be taking off, or is there any type of technology thing that's going to ignite in the next little while?
Oh, there is a lot of things happening in the private networks world. Maybe just picking up a couple of verticals. Pretty much every company that I talk to, they see manufacturing and industry 4.0 as a key opportunity, and this is because of many reasons, starting with the size of the industrial vertical. So that's definitely something where we will see a lot of innovation, a lot of competition, and it's also a very, very risky vertical, because cellular is not a technology that is used in that vertical, and therefore there is a big opportunity, but also quite a lot of challenge. Another couple of verticals that are quite interesting, and this is related with COVID-19. So we've seen that there is a clear interest in the education and the healthcare sector, for obvious reasons. So this is something that in the more shorter term, we will see a lot of activity.
All right, fantastic. Pablo Tomasi, thanks so much for speaking with us today, and please do check out his fine work at the Big 5G event. Thanks, Pablo.
Thanks, Phil. Glad to be here.